The October morning air cut through Maria Gonzalez's jacket like a blade as she fumbled with her cleaning supplies outside the brick townhouse on North Damen Avenue. At 62, Maria had been cleaning vacation rentals for almost a decade, and she'd learned to read the stories houses told through their mess. Empty pizza boxes meant college kids. Wine glasses and candles suggested romantic getaways. But as she inserted her key into the lock of 1847 North Damen that Saturday morning, she had no idea she was about to step into a story that would haunt Chicago for years to come. The key wouldn't turn. Maria frowned, jiggling the handle. The cleaning company had confirmed the guests were supposed to check out by 11 the previous morning. Friday. It was now Saturday, nearly 24 hours later. She knocked gently, then harder. "Hello? Housekeeping?" Her voice echoed in the crisp autumn air, but silence answered back. Through the front window, she could see the warm glow of light still on inside. Her stomach twisted with that familiar feeling she'd learned to trust after decades of life. Something wasn't right. 20 minutes later, after calling her supervisor and the property owner, Maria stood beside Officer Jennifer Walsh of the Chicago Police Department as they prepared to enter through the back door. The spare key hidden in a lockbox had finally granted them access. "Probably just sleeping in late," Officer Walsh murmured, though her hand instinctively moved to her radio. "College reunion types sometimes party hard." But as they stepped into the kitchen, the house felt wrong. Not empty, occupied, but eerily still. 4 wine glasses sat on the marble counter, each filled exactly halfway with deep red liquid that had long since stopped breathing. The wine had turned slightly bitter around the edges, suggesting it had been sitting there for quite some time. "Hello, Chicago Police Department," Officer Walsh called out, her voice carrying through the open floor plan. "We're conducting a wellness check." Maria's eyes swept the living room beyond the kitchen, and her breath caught. Scattered across the coffee table and sofa were 4 cell phones, different models, different cases, all face down as if someone had deliberately placed them there. Luggage sat neatly by the front door, tags still attached, the organized arrangement of people who had just arrived and hadn't yet settled in. "Miss, can you tell me what you see here that seems unusual?" Officer Walsh asked, pulling out her notepad. Maria's hands trembled slightly as she pointed toward the living area. "The phones, officer. Young people. They don't leave their phones. Not like this. Not all of them at once." The house was a typical Wicker Park renovation. Exposed brick walls, modern fixtures, and an open staircase leading to the second floor. Everything appeared perfectly normal, except for the absolute stillness that seemed to press against them, like a physical weight. As they moved through the first floor, Officer Walsh noted the absence of any signs of struggle. No overturned furniture, no broken glass, no indication that anything violent had occurred. The front door had been locked from the inside, with the deadbolt engaged and the security chain in place. "Let's check upstairs," Officer Walsh said, though something in her tone suggested she was dreading what they might find. The second floor held 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. The master bedroom showed signs of recent use. 2 pairs of shoes kicked off beside the bed, a woman's jewelry on the nightstand, men's cologne still lingering in the air. But the bed was made, untouched, as if no one had slept in it. The guest rooms told a similar story. Personal items suggested occupancy, but the beds remained pristine, hotel crisp. It was Maria who found the bathtub. The main bathroom door stood ajar, and through the gap, she could see the corner of an old clawfoot tub. When she pushed the door open fully, her sharp intake of breath brought Officer Walsh running. The tub was filled to the brim with what appeared to be ice water. Floating delicately on the surface were dozens of yellow rose petals, their color vivid against the crystal clear ice. But it was the stillness of the water that made both women step back. After more than 24 hours, the ice showed no signs of melting, despite the house's heating system running normally. "Ma'am, I need you to step back," Officer Walsh said, though her voice carried a tremor she couldn't quite hide. She'd seen many things in her 15 years on the force, but this felt different. Staged, perhaps, but with a precision that seemed almost ritualistic. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, the house on North Daman had become a full investigation scene. Detective Michael Torres, a 20-year veteran with graying temples and tired eyes, stood in the living room, trying to piece together what he was seeing. "Run this by me again," he said to Officer Walsh. "4 adults, all friends, check in Friday evening. Cleaning crew finds them gone Saturday morning, but no sign they ever left?" "That's correct, sir. Maria here has the cleaning schedule. She was supposed to service the property after their Friday morning checkout, but the guests never checked out. When she couldn't get in this morning, we were called." Detective Torres picked up one of the cell phones from the coffee table, noting it was still powered on. The lock screen showed 17 missed calls from Mom and countless text messages from family members growing increasingly worried. "Have we contacted the families yet?" "We're working on it. The phones are all password protected, but we've managed to identify the guests from the Airbnb reservation. Sarah Mitchell, 32, from Seattle, Jennifer Brooks, 29, from Portland, David Chen, 35, from San Francisco, and Michael Rodriguez, 28, from Denver." As Detective Torres absorbed this information, his mind was already working through the logistics. 4 people from 4 different cities, all converging in Chicago for what the Airbnb reservation described as a college reunion weekend. "Any of them have family in the area?" "We're checking now, but Detective..." Officer Walsh paused, glancing toward the staircase. "There's something else you need to see upstairs." In the master bathroom, Detective Torres stared at the bathtub that had captivated Maria and Officer Walsh hours earlier. The ice remained perfectly intact, the yellow petals pristine. He'd seen staged crime scenes before, but this felt different. There was an artistry to it that suggested careful planning, but also something deeply personal. "Have we tested the water?" "Crime scene unit is on their way." "But Detective, I've been a cop for 15 years, and I've never seen ice last this long indoors. It's been over 24 hours, and the heating system has been running the entire time." Detective Torres knelt beside the tub, careful not to disturb anything. The water was crystal clear, but as he looked closer, he noticed something strange about its consistency. It seemed thicker somehow, more viscous than normal water, as if something had been added to alter its properties. The yellow rose petals floated in perfect distribution across the surface, not clustered together as they would naturally if simply scattered. Each petal maintained its position with an almost mathematical precision that suggested they had been placed individually, deliberately. "Get me everything on these 4 people," Detective Torres said, standing. "Phone records, social media, employment history, college transcripts. I want to know why they came here, who they really are, and what connection they might have to this house." By evening, the families had been contacted, and Detective Torres found himself sitting across from Sarah Mitchell's mother, Patricia, in a coffee shop near the police station. Patricia was a woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked hair and the kind of worried eyes that spoke of sleepless nights even before this crisis began. "Sarah was so excited about this trip," Patricia said, clutching her coffee cup with both hands as if drawing warmth from it. She hadn't seen these friends in years. They all went to Northwestern together, graduated in 2012. They used to be inseparable. "What changed?" Detective Torres asked gently. "Why hadn't they seen each other?" Patricia's expression grew complicated. "Life, you know. Sarah moved to Seattle for work, the others scattered across the country. But also, she hesitated, then continued. There was some kind of falling out their senior year. Sarah never told me the details, but I got the impression something happened that damaged their friendship. This trip was supposed to be about making amends. Detective Torres made notes while Patricia spoke, but his attention was caught by something in her tone. Mrs. Mitchell, did Sarah seem nervous about this reunion? Nervous? Patricia considered this. Yes, actually, more than nervous. She called me Wednesday night just 3 days ago, and she sounded scared isn't quite the right word. Apprehensive, maybe? She said she was finally going to make things right with her friends, but that she was worried about how they'd react. React to what? She wouldn't say, but she did mention something about a secret they'd all been keeping since college. She said it was time to tell the truth about what really happened back then. Detective Torres felt his pulse quicken. Did she give you any hint about what this secret might involve? Patricia shook her head, tears beginning to form in her eyes. I should have pushed her for more information. I should have insisted she tell me what was wrong. But she was 32 years old, you know. I couldn't treat her like a child anymore. As Patricia spoke, Detective Torres's phone buzzed with a text from Officer Walsh. Families all report similar conversations. All four mentioned making things right and telling the truth about college. Something big happened in 2012. The conversation with Patricia lasted another hour, during which she provided details about Sarah's life in Seattle, her work as a graphic designer, her close relationships with her family. Nothing suggested Sarah was the type of person to simply disappear without warning. Detective, Patricia said as they prepared to leave, there's one more thing. Sarah mentioned that she'd been having dreams about Northwestern lately. Not good. Dreams. She said she kept dreaming about their old dorm room and that someone was always knocking on the door, but when she'd open it, no one would be there. By the time Detective Torres returned to the station that evening, similar interviews had been conducted with the families of Jennifer, David, and Michael. The pattern was clear. All four had expressed nervousness about the reunion. All had mentioned needing to make things right, and all had referenced some unresolved issue from their college years. But it was the call he received at 9:47 p.m. that changed everything. Detective Torres, this is Dr. Elizabeth Harper from the Cook County Crime Lab. I've been analyzing the water sample from your bathtub. What did you find? That's just it. This isn't regular water. The sample contains several chemical compounds I've never seen in a residential setting. Industrial-grade thermal preservation agents, the kind used in research laboratories to maintain extremely low temperatures for extended periods. Someone with significant chemistry knowledge prepared this mixture. Detective Torres felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. How long could ice made with these compounds last? Under normal room temperature conditions? Days, possibly weeks. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. As Detective Torres hung up the phone, he stared at the evidence board he'd started constructing. Four friends, reunited after years apart, to confront some dark secret from college. A house locked from the inside, phones abandoned, a bathtub filled with chemically preserved ice and perfectly arranged rose petals. And somewhere in Chicago, or perhaps far beyond, four people had vanished as completely as if they'd never existed at all. The yellow rose petals floating in that impossible bathtub seemed to mock every logical explanation. Whatever had happened in that house on North Darman Avenue, it had been planned with a precision that suggested this was only the beginning of a much larger, much darker story. Detective Torres gathered his files and headed home, knowing that sleep would be elusive. In 12 hours of investigation, he'd learned enough to know that this case would challenge everything he thought he understood about people disappearing. Sometimes, the most terrifying mysteries aren't about what you can see, they're about what's been so carefully hidden that even its absence tells a story. The security camera footage arrived at the Chicago Police Department at 7:30 Monday morning, delivered by a nervous property management company representative who had spent the entire weekend trying to locate all relevant recordings. Detective Torres poured his third cup of coffee as he settled in to watch what might be the last documented evidence of 4 people who had seemingly vanished into thin air. The timestamp read, Friday, October 15th, 8:47 p.m., North Damen Avenue. Appeared quiet in the grainy black and white footage, typical for a residential street on a fall evening. Then a silver Honda Civic appeared in the frame, moving slowly as if the driver was checking house numbers. Detective Torres leaned forward as the car pulled up to 1847 North Damen. The vehicle sat idle for nearly 3 minutes before the doors opened. 4 figures emerged, and even in the poor lighting, their body language spoke of excitement and anticipation. They moved with the easy familiarity of old friends, laughing and embracing on the sidewalk. The woman he now knew to be Sarah Mitchell was the first out of the car, her long dark hair catching the streetlight as she stretched after what had clearly been a long drive. Jennifer Brooks emerged from the passenger side, shorter and more reserved, but smiling broadly as she looked up at the house. From the back seat came David Chen, tall and lean, wearing a Northwestern University sweatshirt that felt almost prophetic now. Michael Rodriguez was the last to exit, immediately moving to the trunk to help with luggage. They look happy, Officer Walsh observed, joining Detective Torres at the monitor. Whatever they were nervous about, it wasn't showing yet. The footage captured them carrying their bags to the front door, Sarah holding up what appeared to be a key card, while the others clustered around her. There was a brief moment of confusion. Perhaps the electronic lock wasn't working properly before the door finally opened. All 4 figures disappeared inside at 8:52 p.m. "Run it forward," Detective Torres instructed. "Show me everything until Saturday morning." They watched hours of empty street footage, cars passing occasionally, a jogger around 11 p.m., a neighbor walking a small dog at midnight, but no sign of the 4 friends leaving the house. "Wait," Officer Walsh said suddenly. "Go back to around 3 a.m. Detective Torres rewound the footage to 3 a.m. Saturday morning. The street appeared deserted, just like every other frame they'd reviewed. But at exactly 3:17 a.m., something subtle changed. The house, which had shown warm light in several windows throughout the evening, suddenly went completely dark. "That matches the timestamp from the Wi-Fi disconnection," Detective Torres murmured. "Every electronic device in that house stopped working at exactly the same moment." "That's not a coincidence," Officer Walsh said. "Someone either cut the power or deliberately shut everything down." But the most unsettling aspect of the footage was what didn't happen next. After 3:17 a.m., the house remained dark for the rest of the recording. No lights turned back on, no figures appeared at windows, no doors opened. It was as if the building had simply stopped. "Get me the footage from every camera within a 6-block. A radius," Detective Torres ordered. "If they left that house, someone caught it on camera." While Officer Walsh coordinated with neighboring businesses and residences, Detective Torres turned his attention to the electronic evidence that had been recovered from the house. The 4 cell phones had been unlocked by the department's tech specialist, revealing a digital trail that was both illuminating and deeply troubling. Sarah Mitchell's phone showed the most activity in the days leading up to the reunion. Her text thread with Jennifer Brooks stretched back 3 weeks, filled with increasingly urgent messages about the need to finally deal with what happened and stop running from the truth. October 1st, Sarah to Jennifer. I can't keep pretending anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face. October 3rd, Jennifer to Sarah. We agreed we'd never talk about this again. Some things are better left buried. October 8th, Sarah to Jennifer. But what if someone finds out? What if someone already knows? I've been getting these weird emails. October 10th, Jennifer to Sarah. What kind of emails? October 10th, Sarah to Jennifer. Anonymous account, just photos of our dorm building, nothing else, but they come every few days, always at 3:17 a.m. Detective Torres felt his blood run cold. 3:17 a.m., the exact time all electronic devices had stopped working in the house. The text thread with David Chen revealed similar anxiety. David had been the most reluctant to attend the reunion, repeatedly suggesting they should let sleeping dogs lie. But Sarah had been insistent, and eventually Michael Rodriguez had joined her campaign to bring the group together. October 12th, Sarah to David. We owe it to her memory to finally tell the truth. October 12th, David to Sarah. Her memory? Sarah, she's not dead. She's just gone. October 13th, Sarah to David. That's not what I meant, and you know it. The pronoun she appeared repeatedly in their conversations, always in reference to someone from their college years, but never by name. It was clear that this unnamed person was central to whatever secret the four friends had been harboring for over a decade. Michael Rodriguez's phone contained the most surprising discovery. Hidden in his email drafts was an unsent message to someone named AM with the subject line, "We're ready to talk." The draft read, "We've decided to tell the truth about what happened senior year. We know you've been watching, waiting for us to acknowledge what we did. Sarah says you've been sending her photos. We're scared, but we can't live with this anymore. We'll be in Chicago this weekend. If you want to meet, we'll be at the Wicker Park house. It's time to face what we've been running from." Detective Torres stared at the screen. AM. Someone with those initials had been in contact with the group, possibly threatening them, definitely monitoring their activities. But who was AM? And what had happened during the friends' senior year at Northwestern that was worth hiding for over a decade? The phone records painted an even more complex picture. Starting 3 weeks before their disappearance, all four friends had received calls from the same block number. The calls always came at 3:17 a.m. and lasted exactly 90 seconds. None of them had answered, but the pattern was undeniable. Dr. Elizabeth Harper from the crime lab called just as Detective Torres was reviewing the phone evidence for the third time. "Detective, I've got more information about that bathtub water. The chemical composition is even more sophisticated than I initially thought. Whoever mixed this solution has advanced knowledge of cryogenic preservation. We're talking graduate-level chemistry, possibly even PhD-level expertise. Any way to trace where these chemicals might have come from? That's the interesting part. Most of these compounds are restricted. You can't just order them online. They're only available through licensed research institutions, universities, or specialized laboratories. I'm working on a list of local facilities that would have access to this particular combination of chemicals." After Dr. Harper hung up, Detective Torres found himself staring at the evidence board he'd expanded to cover an entire wall. The timeline was becoming clearer, but the motivation remained murky. Four friends harboring a decade-old secret, anonymous emails arriving at significant times, a mysterious AM who seemed to be orchestrating some kind of confrontation, and now evidence that whoever had prepared that bathtub had access to restricted laboratory chemicals. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Officer Walsh calling from Northwestern University. Detective, I'm here with the Dean of Students. We've been going through records from 2012, specifically looking for any incidents involving our 4 friends. What did you find? There was an incident in April 2012, just a few weeks before graduation. A student named Amanda Morrison went missing from campus. She was never found, and the case was eventually closed as a voluntary disappearance. Detective Torres felt the pieces clicking into place. A.M. Amanda Morrison. That's right. And here's the interesting part. Sarah, Jennifer, David, and Michael were all questioned during the initial investigation. They were Amanda's closest. Friends, lived in the same dorm, spent all their time together. But their stories about the night she disappeared were inconsistent. Inconsistent how? They all claimed they'd been at a party together that night, but other students remembered seeing them in different places at different times. The investigating officers noted that their alibis seemed rehearsed, like they'd coordinated their stories beforehand. Detective Torres closed his eyes, feeling the case taking on new dimensions. What happened to Amanda Morrison? According to the file, she was a chemistry major, brilliant student, planning to pursue a PhD in biochemistry. She'd been acting strangely in the weeks before she disappeared. Paranoid, suspicious, accusing her friends of lying to her about something. Her roommate said Amanda had been working on some kind of private project in the chemistry lab, staying there until all hours. Any idea what kind of project? That's where it gets interesting. The lab supervisor noted that several restricted chemicals had gone missing from the stockroom in the weeks before Amanda's disappearance. The same types of compounds Dr. Harper found in your bathtub water. The implications hit Detective Torres like a physical blow. Amanda Morrison, the chemistry student who had disappeared in 2012, had been experimenting with the same chemicals found in the Wicker Park bathtub. Her 4 closest friends had given inconsistent alibis and then scattered across the country. After graduation, maintaining their silence for over a decade. Officer Walsh, I need you to get me everything the university has on Amanda Morrison. Academic records, laboratory access logs, personal belongings, everything. Already working on it. But detective, there's one more thing. The dean mentioned that Amanda's parents hired a private investigator a few years ago to look into her disappearance. The investigator's name was James Patterson, and according to the dean, he was getting close to some kind of breakthrough when he suddenly stopped returning the family's calls. When was this? About 18 months ago. The parents tried to contact him for weeks, but he'd essentially vanished. His office was cleared out, his phone disconnected. It was like he'd never existed. Detective Torres hung up feeling like he was standing at the edge of a very deep hole. 2 separate disappearances, possibly 3 if they counted the private investigator, all connected to a group of college friends and their chemistry student companion who had vanished during their senior year. That evening, Detective Torres drove to the Morrison family home in Evanston, a quiet suburb just north of Chicago. Amanda's parents, Robert and Linda Morrison, were both in their late 60s now, carrying the particular weariness that comes from a decade of unanswered questions. We never stopped believing she was alive, Linda Morrison said, serving coffee in their living room surrounded by photos of Amanda at various ages. But we also never understood why she would leave without saying goodbye. Amanda wasn't impulsive. She was methodical, careful, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Robert Morrison, a retired engineer with gentle eyes, handed Detective Torres a photo album. These are pictures from Amanda's last semester. You can see she was spending all her time with those 4 friends. They were inseparable since freshman year. The photos showed exactly what Detective Torres had expected. 5 young people who appeared completely comfortable with each other, sharing inside jokes and easy intimacy that spoke of deep friendship. But as he flipped through the chronological sequence, He noticed a change in Amanda's expression starting around February 2012. Her smile became more forced, her posture more guarded. In the last few photos, taken just weeks before her disappearance, she looked almost fearful. Mrs. Morrison, did Amanda ever mention any problems with her friends? Any conflicts or disagreements? Linda's expression tightened. She started acting differently in her final semester, more secretive, suspicious. She accused her friends of keeping things from her, but she wouldn't tell us what she thought they were hiding. What about her chemistry work? We understand she was working on some kind of independent project. Robert and Linda exchanged glances. That project consumed her, Robert said. She'd always been interested in preservation techniques. She wanted to work in forensic science after graduation. But in those last few months, she became obsessed with something she called perfect preservation. She said she was trying to develop a method to maintain biological samples indefinitely without any degradation. Did she ever explain why this was so important to her? She said she was preparing for something, Linda whispered. She kept saying that someday people would need proof of what really happened, and she wanted to make sure that proof would last forever. As Detective Torres drove back to the city that night, Amanda Morrison's words echoed in his mind. Someday, people would need proof of what really happened. What had Amanda discovered about her friends? What truth had she been trying to preserve? And why, more than a decade later, had her 4 closest friends returned to Chicago only to vanish in a house filled with her chemical innovations? The yellow rose petals floating in that impossible bathtub suddenly took on new meaning. They weren't just decoration. They were a message, preserved perfectly for over 48 hours as a testament to Amanda Morrison's final work. Somewhere in Chicago, or perhaps watching from much farther away, someone who had once been a brilliant chemistry student was orchestrating events with the same methodical precision that had made her academic work legendary. The question was no longer what had happened to Sarah, Jennifer, David, and Michael. The question was whether Amanda Morrison was finally ready to reveal what had really happened on that spring night in 2012 when 5 friends became 4 and silence became their most valuable currency. The chemistry laboratory at Northwestern University felt different at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning than it had when Amanda Morrison worked there alone during those final desperate weeks of her senior year. Dr. Helen Vasquez, the current lab supervisor, led Detective Torres through the pristine workspace where Amanda had spent countless hours perfecting her preservation techniques 12 years earlier. Amanda was brilliant, Dr. Vasquez said, running her fingers along the same lab bench where Amanda had conducted her mysterious experiments. But she was also troubled in those last few months. She would stay here until 3 or 4 in the morning, working on something she wouldn't discuss with anyone. Detective Torres examined the stockroom where the restricted chemicals had gone missing. What kinds of compounds was she taking? Cryogenic preservation agents, primarily. Compounds designed to maintain cellular integrity at extremely low temperatures. The strange thing was, Amanda's official coursework didn't require any of these materials. Whatever she was working on, it was entirely self-directed. Did she ever mention why she needed these particular chemicals? Dr. Vasquez hesitated, then opened a file cabinet in her office. I probably shouldn't show you this, but Amanda left something behind. We found it in her lab locker after she disappeared. She handed Detective Torres a leather-bound notebook filled with Amanda's precise handwriting. The pages contained detailed chemical formulas, temperature calculations, and timeline projections. But it was the personal notes scattered throughout that made Detective Torres's pulse quicken. March 15th, 2012. They think I don't know, but I've seen the photos. I've heard the whispers. Something happened. At that party, and they're all lying about it. March 22, 2012, found Sarah's jewelry in David's car. She claims she lost it weeks ago, but I saw her wearing it the night of March 10th. Why are they lying to me? April 3rd, 2012. Overheard Jennifer on the phone talking about keeping the story straight. What story? What are they protecting? April 10th, 2012. I know what they did. I know why they won't look me in the eye anymore. But I need proof. I need something that will last, something they can't destroy or deny. The notebook's later entries focused entirely on chemical formulations and preservation techniques. Amanda had been developing a method to maintain organic materials in perfect condition indefinitely, not for academic purposes, but as a way to preserve evidence that her friends were trying to hide. Dr. Vasquez, Detective Torres said carefully, do you think Amanda discovered something her friends had done? I think Amanda Morrison was the most honest person I ever taught, Dr. Vasquez replied. If she believed her friends were hiding something, then they probably were. The question is whether that something was serious enough to drive her away from everyone she loved. The drive back to the police station gave Detective Torres time to process what he'd learned. Amanda Morrison hadn't simply disappeared. She'd been methodically preparing for some kind of confrontation with her 4 closest friends, developing chemical techniques that could preserve evidence indefinitely. The bathtub in Wicker Park wasn't just a strange detail. It was Amanda's signature, her way of announcing that she'd finally decided to reveal whatever truth she'd been guarding for 12 years. Back at the station, Officer Walsh met him with news that changed everything. Detective, we found something in the house. When the crime scene team did their final sweep yesterday, they discovered that the guest bedroom on the 2nd floor had been recently repainted. What's unusual about that? The paint job was amateur, rushed, like someone was trying to hide something quickly. We scraped away a section of the new paint and found writing underneath. Officer Walsh led him to the evidence room where a section of drywall had been carefully preserved. Underneath layers of hastily applied white paint, someone had written in what appeared to be red marker, "You are exactly where you should be." The handwriting was precise, methodical, the same style Detective Torres had seen in Amanda Morrison's chemistry notebook. There's more, Officer Walsh continued. We found David Chen's laptop hidden in the basement. He had a private YouTube channel that he never publicized. The videos are all about alternative accommodations, unusual rental properties, places with interesting histories. She led him to her computer where she'd queued up David's final video, recorded just 2 weeks before the reunion. David appeared nervous on camera, sitting in what looked like his Denver apartment, speaking in hushed tones. This next trip is going to be different, David said to the camera. We're not just documenting a strange property. We're returning to face something we should have dealt with years ago. The house in Wicker Park isn't just a rental. It's connected to someone we used to know, someone who disappeared because of choices we made. The video cut to David holding up an email on his phone. She's been reaching out to us. After all these years, she wants to meet. Part of me thinks we should just ignore it, keep running like we have been. But Sarah's right. We can't hide forever. Detective Torres paused the video. When was this recorded? October 1st, 2 weeks before they disappeared. But Detective, there's something else. David had a draft video in his editing software, something he never published. The title was "The Game Begins in Wicker Park." The draft video was only 3 minutes long, clearly incomplete. David appeared even more agitated than in the previous recording, speaking directly to the camera with an urgency that was almost palpable. If you're watching this, it means something has happened to us. We came to Chicago knowing it might be a trap, but we couldn't keep running. Amanda Morrison was our best friend, and we let something terrible happen to her. We told ourselves we were protecting her, but we were really protecting ourselves. David's voice broke slightly as he continued. The night she disappeared, Amanda had figured out something about us, something we thought we'd hidden perfectly. She confronted us with evidence, with proof of what we'd done. We panicked. We made a choice that we've regretted every day for 12 years. The video ended abruptly, as if David had stopped recording mid-sentence. Have you contacted David's family about this video? Detective Torres asked. His sister in California. She confirmed that David had been having nightmares for months leading up to the reunion. He told her he was going to Chicago to make amends for an old mistake, but he wouldn't elaborate. Detective Torres spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing every piece of evidence they'd collected. The pattern was becoming clear. Amanda Morrison had discovered some secret her 4 friends were keeping during their senior year of college. Her confrontation with them had led to her disappearance in April 2012. Now, 12 years later, those same 4 friends had vanished from a house filled with Amanda's chemical innovations, leaving behind evidence that suggested they'd finally been ready to confess. At 6 p.m., just as Detective Torres was preparing to call it a day, Dr. Harper from the crime lab called with an update that sent chills down his spine. Detective, I've been analyzing those rose petals from the bathtub. They're not fresh flowers. They're over 12 years old. What do you mean? The cellular structure shows they were preserved using the same chemical techniques we found in the water. These petals were picked and preserved in April 2012, right around the time Amanda Morrison disappeared. Someone has been keeping them in perfect condition for over a decade. The implications hit Detective Torres immediately. Amanda Morrison had been planning this confrontation for 12 years, preserving evidence, waiting for the right moment to bring her friends back to face the truth. The yellow rose petals weren't just decoration. They were proof that she'd been preparing for this reunion since the night she disappeared. Dr. Harper, is there any way to determine where these preservation techniques might have been used? Any specialized equipment required? Actually, yes. The chemical compounds require extremely precise temperature control and specialized storage containers. You'd need access to laboratory-grade equipment, the kind found in research facilities or pharmaceutical companies. That evening, Detective Torres found himself standing outside the Wicker Park house at 1847 North Darman Avenue. The property had been released back to the owner, but yellow police tape still fluttered around the perimeter. In the growing darkness, the house looked ordinary, giving no hint of the mysterious events that had unfolded within its walls. He walked around to the back of the property, where a small garden shed sat tucked beneath a large oak tree. The shed had been examined during the initial investigation, but Detective Torres found himself drawn back to it now, Amanda Morrison's methodical planning fresh in his mind. The shed was unlocked, containing the usual assortment of gardening tools and lawn equipment. But as Detective Torres examined it more carefully, he noticed something the initial investigation had missed. A section of the floor that appeared newer than the rest, as if it had been recently replaced. Using his flashlight, he knelt beside the suspicious flooring. The boards were slightly different in color, and when he pressed on them, they gave slightly, suggesting a hollow space beneath. 20 minutes later, after calling for backup and proper equipment, Detective Torres watched as officers carefully removed the floorboards to reveal a hidden compartment below. Inside was a waterproof container holding items that had been preserved with the same meticulous care as the rose petals in the bathtub. The container held photographs, documents, and a detailed journal written in Amanda Morrison's distinctive handwriting. The photos showed the four friends at various parties and gatherings during their senior year, but certain images had been circled in red ink. The documents included copies of police reports, witness statements, and medical records. But it was the journal that revealed the truth Amanda Morrison had died to protect. March 10th, 2012. The party at Sigma Chi was supposed to be celebration for our upcoming graduation. But something happened that night, something Sarah, Jennifer, David, and Michael have been lying about ever since. March 11th, 2012, found Lisa Chen, David's cousin, in the emergency room. She'd been drugged at the party, couldn't remember anything. After 10 p.m., the hospital ran tests, Rohypnol. Someone slipped her a date rape drug. March 12th, 2012. Lisa told me she remembered seeing David near her drink earlier in the evening. She remembered Sarah laughing when Lisa started stumbling. She remembered Jennifer helping to carry her to a back room. She remembered Michael standing guard outside. March 13th, 2012. I confronted them. They denied everything, said Lisa was confused, said she'd had too much to drink. But I've seen the hospital records. I've talked to other students who were at the party. My four best friends drugged an innocent girl and left her vulnerable to assault. March 15th, 2012. They're panicking. Now, David came to my dorm room begging me to think about what accusations like this could do to our futures. Sarah offered me money to stay quiet. Jennifer cried and said it was just a prank that went too far. Michael threatened me. April 1st, 2012. I've decided to go to the police. I have copies of everything, the medical records, witness statements, photos from the party. Lisa deserves justice, even if it means destroying my friendship with four people I love. April 15th, 2012. They know I have evidence, David found out, about my lab work, about the preservation techniques I've been developing. Sarah said they won't let me destroy their lives over one mistake. They're planning something. I can see it in their eyes. April 20th, 2012. This is my final entry. If something happens to me, if I disappear, the evidence is hidden where they'll never find it. The chemicals I've developed will preserve everything perfectly until someone is brave enough to look for the truth. I pray that someday Lisa Chen will get the justice she deserves. Detective Torres closed the journal with trembling hands. Amanda Morrison hadn't simply discovered her friend's secret. She'd been murdered to protect it. For 12 years, four people had carried the guilt of drugging an innocent woman and then killing their best friend to cover it up. Now they'd returned to Chicago, drawn by Amanda's carefully orchestrated plan to finally reveal the truth. But where were they now? Had Amanda Morrison, through some means he couldn't yet understand, finally gotten her revenge? The yellow rose petals floating in that chemically preserved bathtub suddenly made perfect sense. They were Amanda Morrison's signature on a 12-year plan for justice, preserved like everything else she'd hidden away on that final night in April 2012. The game had indeed begun in Wicker Park, but Detective Torres was beginning to suspect it had ended exactly as Amanda Morrison had planned. The Northwestern University alumni office had been closed for over an hour when Detective Torres convinced the security guard to let him into the building Tuesday night. The revelation of Amanda Morrison's journal had changed everything, transforming a missing persons case into something far more complex and disturbing. If Amanda had been murdered in 2012 to cover up a sexual assault, then the four friends' disappearance wasn't random. It was the culmination of a 12-year plan for justice. The alumni records revealed information that made Detective Torres's suspicions even stronger. After Amanda's disappearance in April 2012, the four friends had scattered across the country with unusual haste. Sarah Mitchell had moved to Seattle just 2 weeks after graduation, despite having accepted a job in Chicago. Jennifer Brooks had relocated to Portland the same month, abandoning her plans for graduate school at Northwestern. David Chen and Michael Rodriguez had similarly fled to opposite coasts, establishing new lives with a speed that suggested they were running from something. But it was Lisa Chen's alumni record that provided the most crucial piece of the puzzle. David's cousin had withdrawn from Northwestern just 3 days after the March 10th party, citing personal health issues. She'd never returned to complete her degree. Detective Torres found Lisa Chen's current address in San Francisco, just 20 minutes from where David had been living. At 11 p.m. Chicago time, he placed a call that would finally unlock the truth about what had happened that spring night in 2012. Miss Chen, this is Detective Michael Torres with the Chicago Police Department. I'm calling about an incident that occurred when you were a student at Northwestern University. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Detective Torres wondered if the call had dropped. When Lisa finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It's about Amanda Morrison, isn't it? Something's finally happened to them. Ms. Chen, I need to ask you about the night of March 10th, 2012, about what happened at the Sigma Chi party. Another long pause, followed by the sound of quiet sobbing. I've been waiting 12 years for someone to ask me that question, Lisa said. I've been waiting 12 years for someone to believe me. Over the next hour, Lisa Chen told Detective Torres a story that confirmed Amanda Morrison's worst suspicions. The 4 friends had drugged Lisa's drink as part of what they initially claimed was a harmless prank. But when Lisa became incapacitated, they'd taken her to a back room where David's fraternity brother was waiting. Lisa's memories of the assault were fragmented due to the Rohypnol, but she remembered enough to know what had happened. When I went to the hospital the next day, they confirmed I'd been drugged and assaulted, Lisa said. But when I tried to report it to the police, David came to see me. He said no one would believe me, that I'd been drinking, that it would be my word against 4 honor students with perfect reputations. What about Amanda Morrison? Did you tell her what happened? Amanda figured it out on her own. She came to see me in the hospital, started asking questions. She was the only one who believed me, the only one who said what happened wasn't my fault. Lisa's voice broke. She promised me she'd make sure they faced consequences for what they did. Ms. Chen, did you know that Amanda was planning to go to the police? She told. She had evidence, photos, witness statements, even medical records she'd somehow obtained. She said she was going to make sure justice was served, no matter what it cost her personally. Detective Torres felt the final pieces clicking into place. What happened after Amanda disappeared? David called me the day after she went missing. He said Amanda had decided to leave school early and that I should let sleeping dogs lie if I knew what was good for me. I was 19 years old, alone, traumatized. I was too scared to push back. Ms. Chen, I need to ask you something important. Have any of the 4 friends contacted you recently? David called me 3 weeks ago. He was crying, said he was sorry for what they'd done to me and what they'd done to Amanda. He said they'd made a terrible mistake and that he couldn't live with the guilt anymore. He asked if I'd be willing to testify against them if they came forward voluntarily. Detective Torres gripped the phone tighter. What did you tell him? I told him it was 12 years too late for apologies, but yes, I'd testify. I'd been waiting my whole adult life for the chance to get justice for Amanda and for myself. After the call ended, Detective Torres sat in the empty alumni office, piecing together the final timeline. The 4 friends had murdered Amanda Morrison to prevent her from exposing their role in Lisa Chen's assault. For 12 years, they'd lived with that guilt, scattered across the country, but bound together by their shared secret. Then, somehow, Amanda Morrison had reached out from beyond the grave to finally bring them to justice. The anonymous emails, to Sarah, the blocked phone calls at 3:17 a.m., the mysterious AM, and correspondence. Someone had been orchestrating a careful campaign to draw the four friends back to Chicago. But who? The answer came at 2 a.m. Wednesday morning, when Detective Torres received a call from the overnight security guard at the Wicker Park house. "Detective, you told us to call if anyone showed up at the property. There's someone here now, in the backyard. They're not doing anything threatening, just standing by the garden shed." Detective Torres arrived at 1847 North Damen Avenue to find a woman in her early 30s standing motionless beside the shed where Amanda Morrison's evidence had been hidden. She was small and slight, with dark hair and wearing a Northwestern University sweatshirt that looked like it had been preserved from 2012. "Are you Amanda Morrison?" Detective Torres called out, though he knew it was impossible. The woman turned, and Detective Torres found himself looking at someone who bore a striking resemblance to the photos he'd seen of Amanda, but was clearly too young to be the same person. "I'm Rebecca Morrison," she said quietly. "Amanda was my sister." Detective Torres felt his understanding of the case shift once again. "Ms. Morrison, I need you to come with me. We have a lot to talk about." At the police station, Rebecca Morrison told a story that explained everything, while revealing the depth of one family's commitment to justice. She'd been 16 when Amanda disappeared, a junior in high school who'd worshipped her brilliant older sister. When the police investigation into Amanda's disappearance yielded no results, Rebecca had made a promise to her parents and to Amanda's memory. She would find out what had really happened. "I spent years preparing," Rebecca said, sitting across from Detective Torres in the interview room. "I studied chemistry at MIT, the same program Amanda had planned to pursue for her PhD. I learned everything she'd taught herself about preservation techniques, but I also learned things she never had time to discover. You've been contacting Sarah, Jennifer, David, and Michael for weeks. Months, actually. I've been watching them for years, waiting for the right moment. They scattered after graduation, but they never really escaped. They stayed in touch, with each other, bound together by their guilt. It was just a matter of time before that guilt became unbearable." Rebecca had orchestrated the entire reunion with meticulous precision. The anonymous emails, the phone calls, even the selection of the Wicker Park house, all part of a carefully planned confrontation that would finally force the four friends to face what they'd done. "Where are they now?" Detective Torres asked. Rebecca's expression didn't change. "They made their choice 12 years ago when they decided my sister's life was worth less than their reputations. They made their choice again this weekend when they came to Chicago, knowing what I might do to them. Ms. Morrison, I need you to tell me what happened in that house last Friday night. They came willingly. They knew why they were there. I showed them Amanda's evidence, the photos, the witness statements, the proof of what they'd done to Lisa Chen. I gave them a choice, face justice voluntarily or have the evidence released publicly. And they chose a third option, the same option they chose when Amanda confronted them in 2012. Rebecca reached into her bag and pulled out a small video camera. They thought they could eliminate the evidence again. They thought they could eliminate me the way they eliminated Amanda, but this time, someone was recording. The video footage Rebecca showed Detective Torres was difficult to watch, but it provided definitive proof of what had happened in the Wicker Park house. The four friends had indeed planned to kill Rebecca Morrison, just as they'd killed her sister 12 years earlier, but Rebecca had been prepared for their betrayal. The bathtub was filled with a solution I developed based on Amanda's research, Rebecca explained. A preservative compound that works almost instantaneously. When they attacked me, I managed to activate a release mechanism that flooded the room with an aerosol version of the same chemical. Are you saying they're preserved? Perfectly preserved, just like Amanda always wanted her evidence to be. They'll never deteriorate, never decay. They're exactly where they should be, facing justice for what they did. Detective Torres stared at Rebecca Morrison, understanding finally dawning. Where are their bodies? In the place Amanda would have wanted them, where they can serve as permanent evidence of their crimes, where Lisa Chen can finally see that justice was served. The investigation that followed Rebecca Morrison's confession revealed the full scope of her 12-year plan for revenge. Working with advanced chemistry techniques she'd learned at MIT, Rebecca had developed a preservation method that could essentially mummify living tissue instantaneously. The four friends' bodies were found in a storage facility Rebecca had rented outside Chicago, preserved in the same chemical solution that had kept the yellow rose petals fresh for over a decade. Lisa Chen flew to Chicago to testify at Rebecca Morrison's trial, finally getting the chance to tell her story in court. The evidence Amanda had preserved proved everything Lisa had claimed about the assault, vindicating both sisters' dedication to justice. The trial became a national sensation, raising questions about vigilante justice, the failures of institutions to protect assault victims, and the long-term consequences of crimes that go unpunished. Rebecca Morrison was ultimately convicted of 4 counts of murder, but public opinion remained deeply divided about whether her actions were justified. During her sentencing hearing, Rebecca spoke directly to Lisa Chen, who was sitting in the front row of the courtroom. "My sister promised you justice 12 years ago," Rebecca said. "She died trying to keep that promise. I finished what she started, not because I wanted revenge, but because some promises are too important to break." The judge sentenced Rebecca Morrison to life in prison without parole, acknowledging the premeditated nature of her crimes, while also recognizing the extraordinary circumstances that had led to them. In the months that followed, the Northwestern University case led to policy changes in how sexual assault allegations are investigated and how missing persons cases involving college students are handled. Amanda Morrison's preservation techniques were studied by forensic scientists, leading to advances in evidence preservation that helped solve cold cases across the country. The house at 1847 North Darman Avenue was eventually demolished, but a small memorial garden was planted in its place. Yellow roses bloom there every spring, maintained by members of the local community who never forgot the story of 2 sisters who refused to let injustice go unanswered. Lisa Chen established a foundation in Amanda Morrison's name, providing support for sexual assault survivors and funding research into trauma recovery. In her first public speech as the foundation's director, she spoke about the price of silence and the courage required to seek justice. Amanda Morrison died because she believed in doing what was right, even when it was dangerous, Lisa said. Her sister Rebecca sacrificed her freedom to honor that belief. Their story reminds us that some battles are worth fighting, even when the cost is everything. Detective Michael Torres retired from the Chicago Police Department 2 years after closing the Wicker Park case, but he never stopped thinking about the Morrison sisters and the lengths they'd gone to protect each other's memory. In his final case report, he wrote words that would be quoted in criminology textbooks for years to come. Justice delayed is not always justice denied. Sometimes it's justice perfected, preserved like evidence in a chemistry lab, waiting for the right moment to finally shine light on the truth. The yellow rose petals that had floated in that impossible bathtub were eventually returned to Amanda Morrison's parents, who kept them in a place of honor in their daughter's room. Preserved by her own chemical innovations, the petals remained, as fresh and vibrant as the day Amanda had picked them, a testament to a brilliant young woman's determination to make sure the truth would never fade away. And in a Chicago courtroom where Rebecca Morrison serves her sentence, she keeps a single yellow rose petal pressed between the pages of her chemistry textbook, a reminder that some promises transcend death, and that love between sisters is stronger than any force that tries to tear it apart. The Wicker Park disappearance became more than just a true crime story. It became a reminder that justice sometimes comes in forms we don't expect, carried out by people who refuse to let the innocent suffer in silence. In the end, Amanda Morrison got exactly what she'd always wanted. The truth, preserved perfectly for all time, impossible to deny or destroy. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the power of truth and the bonds that hold families, together, please take a moment to share your thoughts with us. Like this video, if Amanda and Rebecca's story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel if you believe in the importance of never giving up on justice, and leave a comment telling us about a time when someone you loved stood up for what was right, no matter the cost. Your stories matter, your voices matter, and together we can honor the memory of those who sacrificed everything to protect the innocent. Because sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons or words, but with the quiet determination to never let the truth be buried.